Good afternoon, Littleton, and welcome to 01460 On the Go, the podcast by Littleton for Littleton. I'm here today with Maren Tuhal, our town planner, and Mark Rombacher, our select board chair. And today we're going to talk about the town meeting, which is coming up on May 6th. And as a preliminary matter, also on May 6th is going to be an information session by the Shaker Lane Building Committee. That will be a presentation, as well as time for residents to ask questions and get answers on the present status of the Shaker Lane building effort. That's going to take place at 6 p.m. in the middle school cafeteria. And then when you finished up with that, you can just mosey on over to the gymnasium at 7 for the beginning of town meeting, which is which is what we're focused on today. And that is particularly on Article 12, which is related to town hall and a senior housing opportunity. So Maren, can you tell us a little bit about the background here?
Sure. I will reach all the way back to 2015 when Elder and Human Services had a report done on needs of seniors in town. The results showed three major needs. One was for a senior center. Luckily, our new senior center will open this month. The second was transportation, and currently seniors have a few more transportation options than they did 10 years ago, including marked vans, the van service, and ride-sharing services. Mm-hmm. So that is in the process of being addressed. The third big need was for deeply affordable senior rental housing in Littleton.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by deeply affordable housing?
Yes, a lot of senior households tend to have very low, moderate to low incomes, and it's through in affordable housing, you talk about the AMI, or the area median income. Mm-hmm. So incomes that's 60% AMI or lower is what is being targeted, is what is the greatest need.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, can you talk a little bit about Town Hall and Shattuck Street and sort of the history of why we are sitting in a 2/3 empty building, or soon will be?
So roughly, we're probably around the 2015 timeframe, we had a group that was doing a town hall needs assessment study where we looked at expanding the library, the senior center, and so on and so forth. And that group also identified the need for the housing as the library moved out into its new building and the senior center is of Elder and Human Services are about to move out into a new building. We also recently acquired 36 King Street, the old Indian Hill building, where we're going to be moving the school department and Park and Rec sometime over the summer. There's less and less in the current building, so it's a perfect opportunity to look at future opportunities. About 2.5 years ago, the Select Board issued an RFI, a request for information, where we asked what could be developed in this building as deeply affordable senior housing. And this is the next step along that process.
Okay, so here we are. We have a town hall that is in the process of being addressed, and then we have a need for deeply affordable housing, which brings us to Article 12, right? Okay. So Article 12 is all that's going to be presented on Tuesday, May 6th, and it's going to be different than what you'll see in your town meeting report that you received in the mail. We've rewritten it some. It'll be presented in 3 motions, and in terms of those 3 motions, let's talk about what each motion aims to do.
Okay, so the first motion is allowing the town to go to the legislation and request special legislation that allows us to do a project with construction and procurement, skipping some of the standard laws in that area. The problem without the special legislation, it's very difficult to do a process that has both a construction and a procurement aspect to it. And this is allowing us to bypass some of those regulations, provided that we still, the project is done at prevailing wage. It's a fairly common process done in other communities when they have similar type of projects.
Okay, and so the idea is is that we are going to research the viability of having a new town hall built by a developer so that Shattuck Street would be completely empty and available as deeply affordable housing on Shattuck Street site, right next to the senior center and by the library as well.
Right. So the special legislation takes approximately 9 to 12 months to get through the legislation. So this is the first step in the process, and it allows us to come back to a town meeting sometime next year and go through the next step to issue an RFP or a contract for this project. And we plan to use the next year to publicize this and get better feedback and more information on what can be done here.
Mm-hmm. I think that 12-month timeline is typical, right? Under typical circumstances, I think we've gotten pretty strong indications that in our case, because there's a possibility that this could be that the swap could take place with 550 King, and that the state is very invested in 550 King coming online as soon as possible. The idea is that it might be the timeline for this might be even faster than usual, right? Maybe 6 to 12 instead of 12 to 18.
Right.
Which also plays into the timing on everything else. This is sort of like Jenga, I think, sort of trying to, you're pulling one piece out and making sure that everything doesn't fall apart. Maybe Tetris is the better analogy. I don't know. But there's lots of moving parts is the point. So we've got, that's motion 1, which would allow us to bypass the construction and procurement laws in order to affect some sort of swap type deal. And then we come to motion 2.
So motion 2 allows us to
And that motion 2 is now the one that's hot off the presses from,
Right.
from town council.
Yeah, so motion 2 allows us to negotiate a contract with, nope, that's now motion 3 now.
That's the new motion 3, yep.
Oh,
So motion 2 is going to require that any funds for this project, it has to be allocated or appropriated rather at a future town meeting, and it has to be under a separate and distinct article so that everyone has a clear understanding that this is what we're talking about here, and that it doesn't fall under the operating budget, for example, as a line item. This is going to be separate. Any money that's needed for this project is going to be separately discussed at a future town meeting, which is important.
So the new motion, this is literally hot off the presses as of the past hour or so. It basically says that we won't proceed on this project without a town meeting vote.
Correct.
Further, right? The special legislation gives us the right to, it takes, like we said, 6 to 12 months to get through, and we can't do anything without a future town meeting vote to allocate funds.
Right, and that sort of, we wanted to structure it that way, lessons learned, right? For example, MBTA, we wanted to follow a similar process where we have those info sessions that you all were able to host and let people know what we're planning and find out what's important to them in the planning process and get everyone's opinions into account while we're in the process of working on this. But eventually it will come down to a vote on whether the funding can be appropriated, which will be sort of the up or down vote on the whole project. But before that, which is way down the line. We've got motion 3 of Article 12.
So motion 3 allows the town to partner with one or more developers on these projects. So we're allowed to basically start contract negotiations with a developer after the special legislation is passed
By the state.
at the state
Yeah.
level. So the motion 3 means that if motion 3 passes, that means that when we come back to the town, we have more or less a fully recognized agreement that we can present to the town that they can yes or no and appropriate the funds.
Right. Maren, jump in anytime that we're missing a key point here. Anything that you wanted to jump,
Yep, so the only thing I would add is this rewording of Article 12 is based on feedback that we've heard
That's right.
in our outreach sessions.
That's right.
In our meetings with the chairs of various boards and committees.
Yep, and the public.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. Yeah, precisely so. I think a lot, the timing of all this, like I said, is really complex. But what we're trying to do as the select board is to get the ball rolling on this process by by starting the special legislation and requesting that authorization to go ahead and work on that with our legislators. And because that takes 12 months, 6 to 12 months, hopefully not 18. We don't want to be in a place where everyone gets together. We have all our we have other information, but we don't know whether the special legislation hasn't passed yet, right? So we want to get the ball rolling on that. There's no downside. There's no cost. So the idea is to get the ball rolling by motion 1. By motion 2 is our effort, as you say rightly, Maren, based on feedback to make sure that there's a clear understanding that nothing is going to actually happen with any of these plans. They can't be implemented basically until there's another vote at town meeting as a separate article. And then we've got motion 3, which would allow us to work on the RFP and it would allow us to issue the RFP once that legislation is passed. And
that was going to be my point. First thing that has to happen is the legislation to pass. And then after that, the town could issue an RFP.
Right.
And just to stress how long this process is, it's 6 to 12 months to get the special legislation before we can issue the RFP. And then it'll probably be another 6 to 12 months, based on my experience, on how long it takes to actually execute the RFP and come back to town meeting. And we have been told from the folks that are more familiar with the affordable housing grants that that's typically a 2-year process to get that money. So we're several years down the road before anything will realistically happen to this building. And that's one of the reasons we're trying to start the process now, is because it is such a long process.
Right. So we're talking about 5 years before if everything passed at this town meeting, we're looking roughly at a 5-year timeline to be able to actually move forward with the project itself.
Yes.
So, and I think, there's been a lot of questions about why do we need to do motion 3 now? For me, at any rate, what's important is that when we get to that point where we're making that decision, how much information do we want to have in hand in order to make that decision? For me, the more information, the better. And I think that if motion 3 passes, we'll be in a better position to present better information to inform that vote.
So if motion 3 passes, we can have, yes, I agree with you completely. If motion 3 passes, when we come back with the result to a future town meeting, we will have more or less the terms of a contract and the cost more clearly spelled out. Without motion 3, there will be more potential for ambiguity or a discussion of what we're really there'll be more unknowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, including future construction costs would
Right.
be more unknown.
Yeah, which is huge, huge. And I think the way I envision it is that at some point down the road, we're going to be coming back to town meeting for funding. And to me, you're looking at three different options. You're looking at doing nothing, which is always an option. And one of the things that we're going to be doing over the next year is working on understanding exactly what that means in terms of costs and the future of the building. So one option is do nothing. One option is to relocate our town hall or build a new town hall ourselves, without any sort of swap, right? Which would obviously mean no deeply affordable senior housing, but it would also, I just lost my train of thought. So, and then the other option is option 3, which is what's being contemplated here under 12. And if we can't explain what the cost is, if we can't have a deal in hand to say this is what we're voting on, it's really hard to understand. Well, how is this better or worse than our other two options? So that's the idea behind motion 3 of Article 12.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about in terms of? Did we even talk about Article 13 yet?
No.
No.
So,
Okay, that's important.
so the select board voted, we are going to pass over Article 13 completely. There will be no action taken on Article 13. And that's based on the feedback that we've received from residents. And one of the reasons Article 12 changed in the way that it has to make it clearer on what Article 12 is trying to accomplish and the best ways to move forward.
Yeah, and under what constraints, and yeah, exactly. So you can look forward to a handout at town meeting with an updated Article 12. In addition, we're going to get it up on the website, I think, as soon as we can, right? And
Yes.
do a blast. But so you can look for it on the town website in the near future. Did anybody have any other key points that they wanted to bring up in terms of Article 12 or town meeting in general?
Personally, I'm very excited that this discussion is moving forward. We're able to bring to town floor a question to town residents. Will you let us move forward with the studies and the time that we need and the authority we need to look into this?
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting, the option to or the ability to cite. How many units are we thinking notionally?
A minimum of 40, because the way the low-income housing tax credit program works, that's a sweet spot for minimum number of units.
So, yeah, the idea that we could cite 40 deeply affordable units for seniors here is it's hard to come by. I think those opportunities.
Right, and I mean, it would be right next to the library and the senior center and the Hager Homestead Senior Development, so it's a perfect location for senior housing. And I'd like to stress that we have listened to the feedback from the residents on what we've been getting back, and that's why we've tried to construct this motion in this article in these 3 motions. Motion 1 costs the town no money. There's nothing that's being committed to. Even if we have the special legislation, we do not have to move forward on it. It's just getting the ball rolling.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate your time, both of you. And I hope everyone listening is going to join us on Tuesday, May 6th at 6 p.m. for the Shaker Lane School Building Committee meeting, and at 7 p.m. then in the gymnasium for annual town meeting. That's all for today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.